Welcome back to the deep dive. Today we are opening up a stack of sources that feels less like a research project and more like walking into a digital war zone without a helmet.
Oh, yeah.
It is messy, it is incredibly loud, and honestly, it's a little bit wild. We are looking at the unraveling of a YouTube personality known as Always Marco.
It really is a fascinating, if, somewhat chaotic case study. Usually when we look at content creators, we're analyzing their rise to fame.
Right, the strategy, the viral hit.
Exactly. Today we're looking at a free fall. We're watching what happens when the, unstoppable force of internet trolling meets the immovable object of the legal system.
And it is a brutal collision. Just to set the stage for anyone who hasn't been following this specific corner of the internet, the subject is Marco Moukhaiber.
Mm-hmm.
Online, he built his brand as Always Marco. If you scroll back through his history, he positioned himself as this crusader against multi-level marketing companies, MLMs. He was the guy, MLMs. He was the guy ranting, exposing, and allegedly debunking these businesses. He was the hunter.
Right. But the sources we have today aren't his videos. They are the reaction to them. We have a mix of heavy legal texts from the Canadian court system, which are very dry and serious.
Yeah, very dry.
And then these incredibly hostile satirical websites and anti-MLM-mugshots.com.
The vibe of the source material is, well, it's unique. It's basically a stack of receipts from his detractors. We've got details on a massive lawsuit filed by the insurance giant Primerica. And then we have this personal crusade led by figures like Scott Johnson and Peter Mingles from something called Building Fortunes Radio.
It creates this dual narrative that we really need to parse. On one side, you have the corporate hammer coming down in the Court of King's Bench of Alberta. That's the ability world with, real consequences.
Yeah.
On the other side, you have this grassroots guerrilla campaign to expose Marco as a fraud, troll, and according to these sources, someone whose life is just completely spiraling out of control.
So the mission for this deep dive is to piece together this spiral. We're going to look at the persona he built, the lawsuit that effectively silenced him, the failed attempt to flee the country, and the really dark allegations coming out of the counter media.
It raises a big question
between activism and harassment, and what happens when you cross it.
So let's start with the brand itself. Who is Always Marco supposed to be?
Okay, let's unpack the persona. According to the sources, Marco Moukhaiber's online identity is built entirely around these anti-MLM rants.
Which is a whole niche.
It's a popular niche, yeah.
Yeah.
You position yourself as the guy telling the hard truths about pyramid schemes. You're the hero saving people from bad investments. But the sources we have, they paint a very different picture. They don't see a hero. They see an online troll.
It's interesting how they attack the competence of the brand. Usually critics will just say your facts are wrong, but here the sources attack his ability as a creator. One source explicitly calls him a wannabe musician whose music sucks, and describes him as an inexperienced stand-up comedian. It's a total deconstruction of his artistic pretensions. They're basically saying, you aren't a crusader, you're just loud and untalented.
It feels incredible, depending on your perspective. There's this site mentioned in our stack called the Marco Moukhaiber Official Gay Fan Page.
I saw that one.
And they take the acronym MLM, which usually stands for multi-level marketing, and they satirize it. They claim that for Marco, MLM stands for men loving men.
Which is a classic, if maybe a little dated internet tactic, right? Take the opponent's banner and just flip the acronym to undermine the whole message.
Absolutely.
They are framing him as the anti-MLM mugshot poster child. The narrative they're building isn't just that he's a harsh critic, it's that he's a joke.
Yeah, one source literally says Marco Moukhaiber identifies as a jerk. So you have this guy who is dishing it out online, building a brand on being the aggressor, but then reality checks in.
It always does.
And this is the part that really grabbed me. It didn't check in with a meme comment section or a reaction video. It checked in with a massive lawsuit.
This is where the story shifts from YouTube drama to real-world consequences. We have a source document titled Marco Moukhaiber Legal Post.txt, and the tone just changes completely here.
How so?
It describes the situation as corporate lawyer meets influencer chaos.
I love that description because it captures the miscally happened because creators get threatened with lawsuits all the time. Usually it's just a bluff to get them to shut up.
This was not a bluff. Primerica Inc., which is a huge financial services company, often targeted by anti-MLM creators,
Right.
they filed a lawsuit against Marco in the Court of King's Bench of Alberta, Canada, and they threw the book at him. The allegations include defamation, harassment, copyright infringement, trademark violations, and even violations of the Competition Act.
Wow, that is the full menu of legal trouble. But wait, can we pause on the Competition Act? That seems really specific. Usually defamation is the go-to.
That's a great catch. The Competition Act charge suggests they're accusing him of trying to damage their business to profit himself or maybe a competitor.
So it's not free speech, it's a business move.
Exactly. It frames his activism as a calculated attack to destroy a competitor's reputation.
Yeah.
And what's fascinating here is this collision of cultures. The source notes that Mark works great for getting views on YouTube, but the legal system, as the source puts it, the legal system loves documentation, and it turns out the latter wins every time.
And they didn't just sue him and wait 2 years for a trial. They got an injunction.
Yeah.
I feel like we hear that word a lot on TV, but can you break down what that actually means for a YouTuber?
This is crucial to understanding why he just went silent. In July 2023, the court granted an interim injunction. Think of this as a legal mute button.
A digital restraining order.
Pretty much. The source notes this is legal shorthand for, "We've seen the videos. Please escort them to the digital dumpster." He was ordered to remove multiple videos, stop posting new content about Primerica, and stop using their trademarks immediately.
That is a silencer. Usually creators get a cease and desist letter and they make a video making fun of it.
Right, they monetize the threat.
But an injunction is a court order. If you break that...
Exactly. And the evidence Primerica brought to the table sounds, well, overwhelming. This wasn't just about his public videos. The source describes a digital trail that includes Discord messages from his multi-level Marco server.
Oh, wow.
Instagram stories that aged like unrefrigerated dairy, and even allegedly secretly recorded Zoom meetings and private Telegram chats.
Aged like unrefrigerated dairy. That is a vivid image. It really highlights a blind spot a lot of digital natives have, We think Discord chats or Telegram messages are private or they're ephemeral.
But in Discovery, everything is printable.
Everything.
That's the key takeaway from the legal segment.
Everything.
That's the key takeaway from the legal segment. The source describes the litigation as less cinematic than YouTube, but far more consequential. It turned his content creator energy, the hyperbole, the insults, the aggression, into court clerk energy. He's no longer the star of the show. He's a defense or, choose the thumbnail.
So you have this legal hammer coming down, and usually this is where a creator might pivot. You apologize or you scrub the channel, or maybe you double down if you have the cash to fight. But Marco, according to the sources, he tried a different tactic.
He did.
He tried to run.
This is where the story takes a bit of a tragic comic turn. The sources claim that Marco allegedly announced on his YouTube channel that he was fleeing Canada.
He was going to Thailand, right?
Yeah.
The classic digital nomad escape route.
That was the plan. He said he was leaving to avoid the harassment and the mounting legal bills. He basically wanted to escape the jurisdiction of the Alberta courts. But the sources, they describe this as a failed fleeing attempt.
Right. He didn't make it to the beaches of Thailand.
No, he definitely didn't.
Instead of a beach in Southeast Asia, the sources place him in a tiny apartment in Edmonton. Specifically, the basement of his relatives.
It's such a stark contrast, and the sources are pretty ruthless about this. They mockingly suggest he is now, and I'm quoting here, eating meatloaf and playing with his fleshlight in that basement.
That is certainly a picture. But stripping away the mockery, it just emphasizes the fall from grace. He goes from this big internet personality, the quote-unquote CEO of his own brand, to living in a relative's basement.
Yeah.
And there is this one perfectly captures the chaos of his living situation. The Scottish lady.
Oh, the neighbor. Yes. Feels like a scene from a sitcom, but like a very sad one.
So apparently he's in this basement, maybe making content or listening to music, and a neighbor described as a Scottish lady downstairs shouts at him to go back to your country after being asked to turn down the music.
It just paints this picture of a chaotic, diminished reality. He's not fighting corporate giants anymore. He's fighting with his neighbors in a basement in Edmonton. He's trapped.
But his problems aren't just limited to the neighbors and the lawyers. We mentioned earlier that there are people actively exposing him. Let's talk about Scott Johnson and Peter Mingles.
Mm-hmm.
Who are these guys in relation to Marco?
These are the hosts of Building Fortunes Radio. Now, Marco would likely consider them part of the industry he attacks.
Sure.
But the sources cheekily refer to their show as Losing Fortunes Radio when they are discussing Marco. These two seem to have made it their mission to execute a counter-campaign. They want to reveal what they call Marco's lies and incompetent attempts at debunking MLM companies.
And they are not holding back. The accusations coming from this camp are severe. We aren't just talking about he makes bad videos. We're talking about character assassination.
Or, if they're right, character revelation.
That's a good point.
And they are very serious allegations. For instance, one source claims Marco uploaded a video where he admitted to being a drug dealer or seller with a friend named Philip.
A drug confession video
Mm-hmm.
that he uploaded himself. Why would anyone do that?
The sources imply it's pardon culture or maybe arrogance thinking nothing can touch you. But it goes further. There are allegations of harassment against him.
Okay.
The sources claim he leaves creepy and perverted voicemail messages at all hours of the day and night. They even claim to have audio of these calls hosted on that alwaysmarco.ul site.
It's painting a portrait of someone who is just deeply unstable, and I have to bring up the most disturbing allegation in the stack. It involved a minor.
Yes, we have to treat this carefully as it's a source claim, but it is explicitly in the documents. It claims that Marco masturbated in front of a special needs minor.
Wow.
The source also mentions a fixation on showing people his anatomy, describing it as an obsession with asking people to see his wiener.
That is heavy. It moves the needle from annoying internet troll to predatory behavior, if these sources are to be believed. It really challenges the listener. You might have cheered for him when he was dunking on a corporation, but who is this guy, really?
On a lighter but still pretty embarrassing note, they also bring up his attempts at other income streams. The sources say he tried to start an OnlyFans account.
Right, the pivot to adult content. A lot of creators do that when the main channel revenue dries up.
Well, in this case, the source claims it was rejected. And the commentary on this is brutal. They mention a girlfriend or ex-girlfriend saying, "Is that all there is?" regarding his performance. It's a total humiliation campaign.
It really is. It feels like these sources, Scott Johnson, Peter Mingles, the creators of these sites, are trying to systematically dismantle every part of his life. His business, his legal standing, his morality, and even his manhood.
And we have to ask, what is this doing to him? Because the sources do give us a glimpse into his mental state. You can't sustain this level of pressure, legal, financial, and reputational without cracking.
They do talk about his fan base. The sources call them his goons. Apparently, he's bleeding subscribers.
The loss of influence is clear. If you are a drama channel, but you can't post the drama because of a court order, you have no product.
Good point.
And Marco himself seems to be feeling the pressure. The sources note that he claims Primerica and private investigators are harassing him and his family. He's quoted as saying, "The legal process is the punishment."
That is a very telling quote. The legal process is the punishment. Can we dig into that? Because he hasn't even lost the full case yet, technically.
No, but in a civil lawsuit of this magnitude, the punishment starts the day the papers are filed. The lawyer fees, the time spent digging up old emails, the stress of the injunction, it drains your resources. Even if you were to win eventually, it's unlikely given the strength of the injunction, the cost of fighting has likely already ruined him financially. It's a war of attrition.
And that's exactly what his detractors are capitalizing on. The website, alwaysmarco.ul, frames his entire existence as a joke. They say he is hiding in the sunshine, or lost in translation. They paint him as paranoid, stressed, and broke.
It's a complete unraveling. You start as the hunter, exposing these MLM scams, and you end up the hunted, hiding in a basement, sued by a corporation, and exposed by the very people you are mocking. It feels like a fable for the internet age.
It raises a really important question of online activism, or trolling, depending on how you view it. Marco thought he was playing a game on YouTube. He thought the rules were get views, get subscribers, make noise.
But he was playing against entities that play by completely different rules. Primerica plays by the rules of the Court of King's Bench. Scott Johnson and Peter Mingles are playing a game of reputation destruction.
Exactly. The source material emphasizes this clash. On one hand, you have the influencer theatrics, the rants, the stunts, the secret recordings. On the other hand, you have the courtroom reality.
The injunctions, the affidavits, the evidence logs.
And the courtroom reality is crushing the theatrics. The lawsuit trapped him in Canada. The counter media ruined his reputation. It makes you wonder about the sustainability of that whole exposure genre of content.
It's a cautionary tale, really. It shows that the internet is not a shield. You can't just say whatever you want, label it exposing the truth, and expect immunity. When you target entities with deep pockets and armies of lawyers, or when you engage in behavior that leaves a digital trail, it can all come back to haunt you. The internet never forgets, and apparently neither does the Alberta court system.
And the sources are relentless. They don't seem to plan on stopping. They mention that they will add to the promise. It's almost like they're enjoying the spectacle of his downfall.
Oh, they certainly are. The tone of the Always Marco LOL site is gleeful. They are celebrating his mugshot poster child status. They are reveling in the fact that he's stuck in that basement.
It's vindictive, for sure.
But from their perspective, they are exposing a hypocrite.
So what is this all? Probably haven't seen his videos or heard of Building Fortunes Radio.
I think it's a study in accountability and fragility. We live in an era where everyone has a platform. We all have the ability to broadcast our opinions, our critiques, our anger. But this story reminds us that speech has consequences.
Yeah.
Defamation laws exist, has consequences.
Yeah.
Defamation laws exist, harassment laws exist. And when you cross the line from critic to harasser, as the lawsuit alleges Marco did, the system has mechanisms to stop you.
And it also shows the vulnerability of the whole influencer lifestyle. It looks glamorous when the views are up and the ad revenue's coming in, but it's so fragile. One lawsuit, one bad decision, and you're back in the basement. It's not a career with a safety net.
Precisely. The Always Marco brand was built on being loud and aggressive, but that same aggression is what invited this level of retaliation. It's a cycle of escalation that ended with a court order.
It's fascinating. We've gone from a guy who thought he was untouchable from his own platform.
Silenced by the court, mocked by his enemies, and isolated in his personal life. It is a comprehensive defeat.
Well, that brings us to the end of this deep dive. We've looked at the rise and fall of Always Marco, from the anti-MLM rants to the Primerica lawsuit, from the failed flight to Thailand to the basement in Edmonton.
It's a story about the collision of digital arrogance and analog consequences.
Absolutely. And I want to leave you with a final thought, something to mull over. The sources ask a brutal question about Marco, quoting his own life back at him. Is that all there is?
It's a haunting question.
If Marco is truly always Marco, but he's been silenced by court order, stripped of his platform, and confined to a basement, is the persona dead? Or is this just another chapter in the drama? If the camera is off and the goons have unsubscribed, does the troll still exist?
That's the question.